Okay, all right, I get to kick it off. Well, welcome. It's lovely to see you all here, whatever time of the day it is for you. Um, it's currently 6:30 in the evening on Thursday night in New Zealand. And so welcome to the end of our day. And it was a great day, by the way, just in case you're wondering what your day is going to be like. And in fact, it was a great day because it's luck would have it, both Mark and I have already presented today. So this is our second time around, and we're feeling a little bit tired. So hopefully we'll be able to just sort of keep some energy up here. So it's my pleasure to begin this evening. And so I'm going to start off with thinking about how we connect with nature and how we can use that in our practice as learning developers or learning advisors to help, well, I was going to say to help our students, but, you know, we can maintain some levels of physical and mental health and well-being ourselves by being mindful of connecting with nature. So I'm going to share my screen.
Yep, can see that.
So we're all here. We can see what we're looking at. Yep. How can learning developers, advisors incorporate nature-based practices and interventions to help students boost cognition, learning, and also well-being? So this is the session outline. We're going to start with some science. There's a lot of science out there. Oh, no, before the science, we're going to construct a word cloud. Then we're going to look at the science. So we're going to look at senses and health, or green exercise, micro breaks, nature simulations, and then we'll finish. So it looks like that's going to take a long time. It doesn't take a long time. It's pretty quick. And then we're going to have a discussion, and I've created a Padlet, which I'd like to invite everybody to contribute to in due course if you feel you have anything you'd like to contribute. So first of all, just to kick everything off, can you please hop on your devices and go to menti.com and use the user code 16719599, and a prompt will come up and you'll be asked for 3 words. So they're better if they're single words, but you can have very short phrases and things as well. So what I want you to think about is, what are the benefits you notice of connecting with nature? Thanks, Ursula. That was your suggestion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of here and I will pull it up on the screen for us. So you'll probably see some words in front of you. Don't worry about them. You just use your words. Come up with things that mean something to you. So can we see that? Hopefully. Oh, look at that. So it's like magic, isn't it? It's all happening in real time from all over the world. Look at these things: de-stress, relaxation, calming has the biggest number of votes so far. Freedom, energized, reflection, invigorating, de-stress, awe, fun, space, thankful, that's lovely, resetting, refreshed, quiet, belonging, I love that, belonging, being present, perspective, breathe, I have to go sideways to read it, life, clarity. So what a fabulous bunch of responses here. What I might do is just pause for a moment. I'll stop sharing for the moment. By the way, I'll share this too with you as well. We'll just stop sharing for a moment. And just open up the floor. If anybody has some thoughts that they'd like to add here, anything that you thought when you were asked to do that, anything that you noticed about yourself or what you were thinking about when you were coming up with words here?
As you know, Kaaryn, within te ao Māori identity, that's quite a normal process for us. Apart from being connected, I guess it's that sense of responsiveness and responsibility with it as well.
Oh, I love that. Responsiveness and responsibility. Yep, absolutely. So it's working in partnership, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're connected. Yep, that's wonderful. Absolutely. Thanks, Tania. Did you have something you wanted to say, Kaaryn?
Yes, although it's not anywhere near as profound as that. It was simply that I'm at a city centre university, but we've got a beautiful park literally just across the road from our campus.
Yeah.
And I have noticed the days when I cannot get out to walk around the park, even for 10 minutes, it feels like the day is just one long morning instead of if I have a break. Sorry, my dog also likes parks. He's very excited about this.
Who's your dog, Kaaryn?
This is Bertie. He likes to be part of things.
Yeah.
I notice when I have a break, it resets me for the afternoon, and I get out and I can look at something green. And it's the same with my train ride in the morning. I go past beautiful fields and woods, and I see deer, and there's just something about being able to put myself there. It's quite liberating. It separates me from anything that I might be doing or have to do. I can just put myself somewhere else.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That was actually very profound, Kaaryn. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really interesting. Sorry.
Go, Ursula. I was going to say, does anyone else?
I was just thinking it's really interesting you mentioning the way in and potential breaks. And it's quite funny because I always thought that is also related to privilege in a way, particularly if you're in urban areas, because we're in the West End of Glasgow. So the GCU, the university where I work, is in the centre, and I mean that's an urban centre. It's a nice one, but still partly. But our children usually had to go to primary school through Glasgow University, the good one in town, and they have beautiful grounds. And I was always thinking they have no idea how privileged they are, that they're away to school as urban children growing up in, I mean, Glasgow is a pretty decently sized city. They walk through greenery every morning. Because if you look at the majority of school kids in Glasgow, they're not walking through green every morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was interesting that you noticed that and that you appreciated that for your children. It's wonderful.
I think it's particularly if you live in urban areas, you can see the other bit as well, obviously. It depends on in which direction you walk, basically. Yeah. I was actually thinking when Tania was speaking, it also has something, it's really interesting, that connection. To some degree, it might also have something to do with appreciating something that is reasonably new. And one of the things, I don't know about you, Kaaryn, but one of the things I find absolutely fascinating about the UK is how green it is. And mind you, I'm coming from continental Europe. It's not that I'm thinking about dusty, sandy, dry, arid areas. But even in comparison to that, it's just so lush because of the rain.
Yeah.
But when the sun is out, it's just so nice. And I think that even after years and years and years, that sense is still there because it's something that I didn't grow up with, maybe. I don't know.
I wonder, Ursula, because you did bring up the word privilege, and to some degree, I think that there's some honesty there, authentic thinking around that, because looking in terms of all our different cultures and the inheritance that we have and the heritage that we have, my culture is relatively new compared to the many ancient cultures that have gone before us. And in a sense, I do think that my culture is still in that privileged state of being still connected in meaningful ways, because it's still uplifted in our culture, and spoken about daily and lived out in our cultural behaviours and practices, especially on our Indigenous places that we go and gather, so that it's still very real and relevant to us today, whereas many of our ancient cultures have gone through lots of processes that may, in actual fact, have taken them away from those values and those wonderful practices that they once inhabited, but perhaps are far removed from because of their own knowledge, growth, and changes in their structures.
I think that's definitely true to say that the Māori culture is definitely a lot more connected with the natural world than many of us. And you're right in that. I guess you didn't have to go through the Industrial Revolution, which was the defining thing in Europe, really, wasn't it? That sort of made the difference.
And the central belt of Scotland was one of the first areas to industrialise. It wasn't, I mean, if you think about Manchester, etc., then the central belt comes shortly after. So in that sense, I think it's actually because of that history that has become a privilege again, because we have such densely populated urban centres where having a bit of greenery around is a socioeconomic privilege. If you look at house prices in Glasgow and where the parks are,
However,
there's a clear
Ursula,
connection.
Hopefully I can bring some science to you and you can look at some options for your urban areas. So should we press on with some science now? Okay, thanks guys. And I will share again. So we went back there. Just need to get rid of that. So we've done that one. We can move on. So we've all just chatted about this now. Benefits of nature: reduces stress and anxiety, improves mood, emotional regulation, boosts cognitive performance and creativity, and encourages physical activity, of course, which obviously promotes overall health. So we as learning advisors and learning developers, we're in a privileged position of time with students, and we may get to know a lot about how they're managing their health and well-being and their studies. And as more and more research is showing us, there are poorer and poorer levels of mental health for our youth and adolescents now. So what can we do as learning advisors? Well, I'm proposing that we start back with nature. So I'm introducing you here to a fabulous book, Good Nature, by University of Oxford Professor of Biodiversity, Kathy Willis. It's a fabulous book. This is a little quote from a podcast of hers. If you look at green landscape versus an outline of, let's say, the Manhattan landscape, even within 90 seconds, your blood pressure is lower and your heart rate variability and the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system is also lower. So physically and psychologically, you're better off. Physically and psychologically, that's pretty powerful, isn't it? So she looks at the senses. So if you think about sounds, there are studies that show that people recovering from surgery, if they're exposed to bird sounds, so this is the lovely twitters, it's not crows or seagulls, that sort of thing. Running water, as in brooks or the sea, or the sound of a breeze in trees, that can really aid with recovery. Smells are quite different from all our other senses, because if you think of a fragrance, it contains volatile organic compounds that enter your body through your nose in a vapor, but end up in your blood. And so things that you smell really can impact what's happening inside your body. For instance, the smell of pine can be very regenerative and can help with healing and things. And lavender really truly does help with sleeping. And whatever it is that's in the lavender molecules gets in the blood and just calms the nervous system down. Now, on the other side of this, it also means that volatile organic compounds that are nasty can also get into our blood. And the fragrance industry is completely unregulated, and we're surrounded by fragranced everything, right? Fragranced rubbish bags, fragranced products, fragranced laundry detergent, shampoo, perfumes, colognes. All of these contain volatile organic compounds that get into our blood, and they can impact us really negatively. There are a lot of carcinogens in many of these products too. So if you're somebody who starts to feel unwell around strong smells, that could be why you could have some sort of intolerance to these things. So it's really important, our tactile relationship with the land. There's an interesting study where two groups of children, one play in a sand pit of dirt from a forest, and the other group plays with a sand pit full of sterile dirt. And 6 weeks later, the children who played in the forest dirt still had much more positive microbiomes than the children who played in the sanitary dirt. So this is indicating, of course, one of the reasons why we seem to be seeing so many allergies these days. So the gut and the skin adopts the signature of the microbiome that you're in, and all of that good microbiome triggers metabolic processes, which leads to a reduction in inflammatory markers. So we have an increase in inflammatory diseases, for instance, cancer, and part of the reason for this could be a lack of gut flora. The indoor plants are really interesting, and this is where I've got some ideas for you, Ursula. So they change the inflammatory markers in our surrounding. So there was this fabulous little study that put one lonely spider plant in a room. And 6 weeks later, they tested the walls and the ceiling and the floor and found that one spider plant had seeded the walls, the floors, the ceilings, and everything. So you don't need lots of plants in your surrounding, but they're really, really helpful. More and more, we're talking about biodiversity medicine. For instance, in Singapore, you can get a doctor's prescription for forest bathing. And I think we're going to see more and more of these things. So just thinking about all of these things in relation to our practice as learning advisors. So we've all experienced awe, right? Why does it make us feel so gobsmacked? Well, for a start, it deactivates the default mode network. So that's the brain network that we employ when we're not thinking about anything in particular. We might be thinking about the past, thinking about the future. We might be planning something, and we might be ruminating or worrying. So for our more anxious students, deactivating the default mode network is very helpful to calm the nervous system. So, and obviously it evokes positive emotions as you stand on a beach and look out at a sunset, or you stand on top of a mountain and look out over a gorgeous mountain range. Encourages contemplation and reflection, and that makes us feel small in a big world. When we're inside with just the world inside our head, we are the world. But as soon as we step out in nature, we are a small fraction of the earth in which we live. And this evokes feelings of humility and oneness with the world, and also decreases depressive systems. There's a fabulous story that I love to tell. There was a study that was conducted with two groups of older adults. They were taken on a walk once a week for 8 weeks or so, and one group just went on a walk with a guide, and they were encouraged to take photographs. The other group went on an awe walk with a guide, and their guide pointed out the awe in the environment, made them take notice of the clouds or the leaves or the way the sun's shining through this thing. So they found a couple of really interesting things. The people who went on the Ore Walk had lower levels of stress and anxiety by the end of the 8 weeks than the ones who just went walking. But on top of that, a really interesting thing was the ones who went on the general walk still were taking selfies at the end. Hey, this is me in nature. See me with this mountain. See me with the sea. The ones who went on the Ore Walk, as time progressed, took more and more, took larger photos of the landscapes, and the size of the people in the pictures reduced. So that's great. Find your ore every day. The thing is, it doesn't last. You have to keep finding it. So the benefits only last for a short period of time. So I encourage you to find your ore daily. So green exercise and mental health. So this is exercising outdoors. This is a double whammy of goodness for us. Lowers cholesterol levels, increased endorphins, supports cognition, and helps to regulate the circadian rhythms. So if you get outside and you exercise, there's a whole ton of great things going on here. Nature micro breaks. So we talked about that. Nature micro breaks reduce stress and anxiety. They improve mood and emotional regulation, boost cognitive performance, focus and creativity, and again, encourage physical activity. But here's the thing, and this is another one for you, Ursula, even simulations help. Okay, so if you live in the middle of an urban sprawl and it's really hard to get out in nature, don't worry about it. Simulations can help. So in this study, they found that nature videos evoked positive memories and were associated with positive outcomes for people suffering from stress and anxiety. This one here had a group of students conduct tasks, and they found that those who looked at a picture of a green roof, so that's just grass on top of a roof, were much more accurate than people who took breaks and just looked out over a picture of a concrete roof. So patients recovering from surgery who were exposed to nature with water pictures reported less pain and less anxiety following surgery. And in this study, students were divided into 2 groups. So we had a group of high anxiety students and a group of low anxiety students, and they performed a pseudo exam, and they found for the students who had high exam anxiety that the anxiety levels were greatly reduced by looking at pictures of nature. So the thing is, if you can't get out in nature, if you don't have it in your surround, the great news is that merely looking at pictures of nature can be really helpful. So I'm thinking here, you know, if you have a student who suffers from extreme exam anxiety, one of the things that we can do when we're talking about them and talking about managing exams and strategies to help with exam anxiety is to point out to them, look, you know, if you spend some time looking out the window or going outside, and if you can't do that, look at a picture that makes you really happy from nature. It will help to calm you down. So now it's discussion time. So I'll stop sharing. So I'm interested in your thoughts. I'm also interested in whether you think that talking about these things falls into our scope of practice. Is this stuff that is really useful for us to share with our students? And I've done enough talking, so please, I open the floor.
You'll already know from me that that's a positive and that's a yes. And that's something actually that we practice already. where there are times when we're working with our students. As an example, when we run a wānanga, and for those who don't know, it's a type of workshop, except it's a deliberate inclusion of that holistic way of learning, which is inclusive of spiritual learning as well. So when we run a wānanga with our students, it might be on a traditional marae or place of gathering, and that therefore means that we include spaces outside. And I can remember we use activities like asking them to go out and bring something from the outside in and use that as a point of reference, whether that's talking about, for example, when we do time management, what is a point of stress for them, and what does this stone or this leaf that you've collected or this branch or whatever it might be, how might that be a reminder of ways to de-stress, or what is a parallel kind of strategy that they use that this reminds them of that. So the inclusion of nature and nurture and the environment is hugely significant for us.
Thank you, Tanya. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Does anyone else have any thoughts about, is this our role to bring this kind of information and advice to students?
I would agree.
Definitely think so. Based in Salford, so it is, when you were talking, Ursula, about Glasgow, I could connect with that absolutely. And I live in South Manchester, which is a lot greener, because that's where a lot of the money was, and actually when I cycle into work, I can see the green disappearing. Until, fortunately, I get to Salford campus work, because we're very fortunate. We've got one of the country's first parks there as well, in Peel Park next to the river. So that's a real bonus for us. But what I think is particularly really important about this for me is because I work with nurses, they're constantly in an urban environment usually, unless they're visiting nurses, which we only have a small number of, but they're in that hugely stressful and urban environment, and then actually just reminding them they can go outside, there is a park around the corner and things like that is hugely important. So I've actually gone and we have a room where we do one-to-ones, and I've put in there plants and things seeded from plants in my own house that I've then put in and put there and keep them alive. And I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Just to the atmosphere in that room.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and it is definitely our role to think about the environments that we create at work, whether we're working with other staff, whether we're working with students, especially with students. I don't see students myself anymore, but when I did, my office, I covered the walls with all sorts of different pictures because I was in there and I wanted to look at nice things. So I had a printout of the best pizza that I'd ever eaten, or pictures of family, or postcards, or nice posters that I liked of important things, and I put it on the wall. And it was always a talking point when students were nervous, or if they weren't sure what to talk about, they could look at the wall and they could quite often comment on something like, "Oh, what's that pizza?" It's like, "Well, let me tell you about it." So if I'd had pictures of a beautiful mountain on there, or I did actually have a coastline picture on there, but it does change the environment that you're in.
Yeah,
I think, and we want students to feel comfortable in the environments that we're in, because then we can focus better on what we're doing. So I think even making some changes like that, something small where you can change the feel or the tone or the look of an environment.
Yeah.
I think that can only be beneficial for everybody.
Absolutely. And I think too, I'm thinking about conversations that we might have with students around study techniques. and how important it is to set tasks, take breaks, and when you take a break, go outside if you can, or look at a picture of nature, and move as well. You know, maybe, I don't know, do some squats or some press ups or something, or run around the building. Anything, changing the state, getting the blood flowing, and just trying to get that blood pressure down, resetting the nervous system so that you're fresh and you can go on the next, you know, the next piece of study, whatever it is, the next 20 minutes, so that we're all always encouraging students to be really mindful about taking breaks and about connecting with the world when they take their breaks, that sort of thing. So it can really, you know, help to get the energy levels up. Is anyone, any other thoughts here? Different.
I was just wondering, when you were talking about your office, Kaaryn, that's a really interesting one, because I think it does presuppose, though, that you have a space where you feel you belong and you can make your own.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, the kind of shared offices that I've been in have not been particularly conducive to that, to put it mildly. But the other thing I was thinking about before, when you were mentioning the simulations, Kaaryn, I thought that was a really interesting one, because on the one hand, I can completely see the benefit in situations where you just don't have access to anything else. I'm a wee bit, I don't know if anyone else felt that, but there was that slight worry that, oh no, not another thing on the screen. In terms of, don't show me green on screen, I can actually have real green. And I was wondering, that is something that probably, in my sense, needs a bit of delicate handling, that I can completely see the benefit as a second best solution where first, as in real nature, is not available. But I can also see the danger of that becoming another tick box exercise. Our students should feel good now because we painted the walls green and we put a plant in, which is obviously not what we want.
Yeah. I feel there might be a few steps in between all of those, but yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's just sharing the science, right, and offering the ideas. We're all different. We're all going to react in different ways. We're all going to respond in different ways. So I guess it's just, you know, just putting it out there, really, isn't it? So I might just maybe I'll just move on, because I'm aware of time ticking, and I know Mark's got some really interesting stuff to share. So, that was us. So what can we do? Well, as I said, sharing the science. So knowing the science, and by the way, there's an extensive reference list with this, and I've added it to a Padlet that I've made, so you have access to a whole pile of information here. So what this means is, if we're looking at the science and we're understanding our students and their needs, we're in a better position to offer individual support, but this includes the holistic understanding of our students, and in that we can help provide some sort of guidance for students to discover ways that they can use nature to keep themselves calm and well. So I've made a Padlet for us, and I'll stop sharing in a moment, and I'll put the Padlet link in the chat, but I'll just finish off here. So thank you so much for, especially those of you who have got up really early to join in. I hope that it's been worthwhile for you. I hope that the conversations have been rich and helpful, and that the resources will be helpful for you as well. And so that's just to show you what the references look like, but I have shared them on the Padlet. So I'm just, if all things go well, I'll put the Padlet in the chat, and I've started it. I'm no expert on Padlet, but I've made a whole pile of little pages, and I'm just going to try and pull this up for you right now, just to give you an idea. So I've just added some things in. It's a little video. This is a blog that I wrote. This is the book that I told you about, and this is a podcast with Kathy Willis, if you want to listen to that. Here are some abstracts of some of the studies that I shared with you. And on the next page, we have the reference list. And look at all this beautiful space here, ready for people to upload all kinds of wonderful things. No pressure. But please feel free, if you think of anything that you think would be useful to add to the Padlet, please do. And I think we've got about 4 minutes before we need to hand over to Mark. So does anyone have any final thoughts or feedback or ideas? I'll put all this together for a blog post, and I'm very happy if anyone would like to collaborate on that with me. So if you feel the urge, let me know. Does anyone have any final thoughts here?
I was just going to ask Kaaryn that while we all have 100% agreement here that this is hugely significant and important, and one avenue in which we can support students and actually staff, are you also aware of any kind of limitations that we have, even though that we want to do this? What might be some of those limitations, and how might we overcome them, I suppose? Is there any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest limitations for incorporating nature in our life is the very nature of the way that we live. We're not designed to live inside with fluorescent lights and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So our physical environments will always be a challenge, I think, and being aware of that, and for students, I guess, being aware of what might be stressful for them in the environment. For instance, I'm thinking if somebody feels over aroused in a busy classroom or in a lecture theatre, it's probably better for them to sit somewhere where they're not having stimulation from so many different areas. All right, trying to limit stimulation if you can, and that's always easier said than done. Lecture theatres tend to be pretty hideous places. They tend to be dark holes with bright lights, and there's not much you can do about that. But I guess just alerting people to the fact that it's a good idea to get out of this place, go and look at the sky. So there's the physical side of it, but on the other side of it, I guess if we believe strongly that we should be incorporating this kind of science in our practice, then we need to do it, and we need to spread the news. Right? I'm sure that there will be people and team leaders who might say, no, this is outside of our scope of practice. I don't happen to believe that it is, but I mean, that's something we could come up against too, Tanya. So it's just really knowing the science and knowing why it's important to impart that information for the health and well-being of students.
Yeah, I think my question was more geared around if we were wanting to introduce that into our spaces of teaching, what are the limitations that we have? Obviously, if you live in a big city with the density of houses around you, the only options we do have is, because we've got to work within our limitations, is bringing in coloured pictures and plants and so forth. But are there thinking outside of the school box. Are there times when we say once a term or once a month we're going to take a group of students and we're going to go and sit in the park to do some learning?
Absolutely. Do it as often as you can. Take your learning outside if you can. It will be better for most people. Anyway, listen, I'm really aware of time, so I'm going to have to thank you all graciously for getting up early and for joining me. And please add to the Padlet, and please contact me if you have any questions and if you'd like to collaborate on a blog post with me about this. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day, and I'll pass you over to Mark. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Karina.
Thanks so much, Kaaryn. Yeah, it was still very interesting. I watched this and participated earlier today, and it was still just as interesting the second time. Yeah, thank you so much, Kaaryn.
Thank you.